Hey y'all, thought we'd pop in today to talk about sewing machine basics and how to get started without feeling like you've accidentally been hired to pilot a spacecraft. Seriously, the first time most people sit down in front of a sewing machine, they stare at it like it's about to ask them to calculate orbital velocity. There are knobs and dials and mysterious little metal bits and a foot pedal that somehow makes everything happen at once. It's enough to make anybody nervous. The good news is that sewing machines are much friendlier than they look. Once you understand what each part actually does, you'll wonder why it ever seemed intimidating in the first place. Think of today as translating your sewing machine from alien technology into just plain English. Before you even think about stitching your first masterpiece, it's worth taking a few minutes to get acquainted with the machine itself. Nearly every sewing machine has the same basic cast of characters. There's the spool pin holding your thread, the bobbin hiding underneath like it's playing the world's least exciting game of hide and seek, the presser foot keeping everything in place, the feed dogs pulling the fabric through, the tension dial deciding whether today will be peaceful or dramatic, and the hand wheel that lets you move that needle manually. Then there's the foot pedal, which every beginner somehow believes only has two settings, barely moving and launch into hyperspace. Trust me, we've all accidentally stitched at approximately the speed of light, at least once. One of the smartest things you can do is actually read your sewing machine manual. I know. Reading the manual sounds about as exciting as watching paint dry while someone explains tax law. But sewing machine manuals are surprisingly helpful because they're written specifically for your machine. They show you exactly where everything is, how your model threads, what all those symbols mean, and sometimes even how to solve common problems before they become giant headaches. 5 minutes with the manual can save you an hour of staring at your machine while asking, why are you like this? It's one of those rare occasions where reading the instructions really is the shortcut. Now let's talk about threading, because this is where many beginner sewing adventures temporarily become comedy shows. If your machine isn't threaded correctly, it will absolutely let you know. Usually by creating what can only be described as a bird's nest made entirely of expensive thread. The top thread needs to follow the proper path through the guides, around the tension mechanism, and finally through the needle. The bobbin needs to be wound evenly and inserted the correct way. One tiny trick that saves a lot of frustration is to always thread the machine with the presser foot raised. That opens the tension disc so the thread can seat correctly. Forget that step, and your machine may decide today is a great day to create modern art instead of nice little stitches. Speaking of mysterious things, let's tackle thread tension. That word alone makes people nervous, but it really isn't as scary as it sounds. Tension simply controls how the top thread and the bobbin thread meet in the middle of the fabric. If your stitches look balanced, congratulations. You probably don't need to touch that dial. If loops are appearing underneath or the stitches look strange on top, then it's time to make small adjustments. Notice I said small. Resist the temptation to spin that dial like you're trying to crack a safe. Tiny changes followed by testing on scrap fabric usually solve the problem. Sewing machines appreciate patience. Dramatic overreactions are generally reserved for humans. Another thing that surprises beginners is that sewing needles aren't one size fits all. Using the wrong needle is a little like trying to eat soup with a fork. Technically you're trying, but nobody's having a good time. Universal needles work for many everyday fabrics. Ballpoint needles are much happier with stretchy knits. Sharp needles glide beautifully through tightly woven fabrics, and denim needles are built for thicker materials that would make ordinary needles cry quietly into the scrap bin. Thread matters too. Good quality, all-purpose polyester thread handles most projects beautifully, while specialty threads have their own jobs. Matching the right needle and thread to your fabric solves a surprising number of sewing problems before they even begin. Here's some wonderful news for beginners. Your sewing machine probably has dozens of stitches you'll almost never touch. Manufacturers seem to believe every sewing machine should contain enough decorative stitches to recreate an entire embroidery museum. In reality, you'll spend most of your time using the humble straight stitch. It's dependable, practical, and quietly gets the job done without asking for applause. The zigzag stitch is another useful friend, especially for finishing edges or sewing stretchy fabrics. Beyond that, buttonholes and stretch stitches are nice to learn as you gain confidence. Don't feel pressured to master every option immediately. It's perfectly acceptable to ignore the decorative stitch shaped vaguely like a decorative fern wearing fancy pants. When it's finally time to sew, slow down. Place your fabric under the presser foot, lower it into position, hold onto those thread tails for the first few stitches, and gently press the foot pedal. Notice I said gently? The sewing machine is already motivated. It doesn't need encouragement from your entire body weight. Let the feed dogs do the work instead of pulling that fabric through yourself. They're designed to move everything at the proper pace. Your job is mostly steering. Think of yourself as driving calmly down a country road instead of competing in an action movie car chase. Your seams will thank you, your needle will thank you, and your blood pressure might send you a thank you card too. Eventually, something will go wrong. This isn't just a possibility, it's practically a sewing tradition. Maybe the thread bunches underneath. Maybe the stitches skip. Maybe the thread snaps every 12 seconds just to keep life interesting. The important thing is not to panic. Most sewing problems have surprisingly simple causes. Rethread the machine, check the bobbin, replace an old needle, make sure the presser foot is lowered, or verify that everything is seated correctly. Sewing machines often give little clues through the stitches they produce. It's almost like they're speaking their own language. Once you learn to recognize those clues, troubleshooting becomes far less mysterious and far more satisfying than dramatically declaring the machine haunted. Finally, don't forget that your sewing machine deserves a little care now and then. Lint builds up faster than you'd expect, especially if you're working with cotton or fleece. Every so often, unplug the machine, remove the needle plate if your manual recommends it, and gently brush away all the fuzzy little hitchhikers hiding inside. Replace your needle regularly because dull needles make life harder for everyone involved. If your manual recommends oiling, follow those instructions instead of just guessing. A clean machine runs more smoothly, lasts longer, and is much less likely to throw an unexpected tantrum halfway through a project. Well, y'all, that's about it. Tell me in the comments what surprised you the most about your own sewing machine, or share the funniest sewing mishap you've ever had. Happy stitching!